Hello, Krakow.
Good evening.
Good evening, PEN delegates. Good evening, special guests. Good evening, Krakow, our friends. We're absolutely delighted to be here with so many of you this evening, and we're delighted to be opening our 91st PEN World Congress here in Krakow, a city of culture, a city of art, and a city of letters. I'm Romana Cacchioli. I am the Executive Director of PEN International. Woo! Well, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with my partner, Magda Haydel, Secretary General of Polish PEN. Magda.
Thank you, Romana. Thank you, everybody, for coming. On behalf of the Polish PEN, I wanted to say how honored and happy we are to be here together, first of all, with the delegates to the 91st World Congress of PEN International, and then also with the Krakow literature lovers who came here to listen to the wonderful conversation that we're going to hear tonight of two magnificent writers and staunch advocates for the freedom of expression, our very own Olga Tokarczuk, the Nobel Prize laureate, and our very own Burhan Sonmeza, president of PEN International.
And we're also honored to be joined shortly by Margaret Atwood, who'll be appearing very shortly on the screen. She's a legendary author, lifelong champion of free expression, an eco-justice warrior, and of course, Vice President of PEN International. Dear friends, over the next few days, delegates, writers, poets, journalists of PEN International will be gathering to discuss some of the most important themes: free expression, war, censorship, the themes that we come together, debate, have testimony, and hopefully find some solutions and some actions. We're honored to be here with PEN Poland under the powerful theme, freedom of words, words of the free. We will also be imagining new solidarities and creative futures shaped by culture, resilience, truth, and hope. Thank you for joining us for this extraordinary moment. Before we begin, though, just a little bit of housekeeping. Whilst you're very welcome, of course, to take photos of anybody on the stage, we really ask you not to be taking photos of people in the audience. Thank you. So Magda, without much ado, shall we start?
Let me just add one more thing. Polish PEN is deeply honored to host you all here in the year of its centenary. We are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Polish PEN and the 100 years of our fight for freedom of expression in Poland, and not just in Poland. Tomorrow there will be a launch of the exhibition of the history of Polish PEN, and you'll learn more about our activities. Now, before we start any of our wonderful attractions, literary discussions and presentations of the evening, let us listen to an empty chair, the tradition of PEN International. Before every meeting we hold, we remember somebody who is not with us. And the empty chair stands for somebody who is imprisoned, persecuted, missing, and who is forced to be silent. Today, the empty chair is going to be read by Tatiana Niedbay, our wonderful colleague from PEN Belarus, which was delegalized in Minsk and now operates from Warsaw. Tatiana.
Good evening. Andrzej Poczobut, Belarus. writer and journalist Andrzej Poczobut is serving an 8-year sentence in a medium-security penal colony on trumped-up charges of inciting hatred and encouraging sanctions aimed at harming the national security of Belarus. A prominent Polish-Belarusian minority activist who holds dual citizenship, Poczobut was arbitrarily detained on 25 March 2021 in connection with his coverage of 2020 anti-government protests in Belarus, statements he made in support of the Polish minority in Belarus, and his labeling of the Soviet invasion of Poland in 1939 as an act of aggression. He spent almost 2 years behind bars before his unfair sentencing in February 2023. His sentence was upheld and appealed 3 months later. He has been held in solitary confinement and denied vital heart medication as well as access to correspondence, especially in Polish. PEN International believes that Poczobut is being targeted for his views and writings critical of the Belarusian authorities and calls for his immediate release. Poczobut should be held in conditions that meet international human rights standards for the treatment of prisoners, including access to adequate health care and regular communication with his family and lawyers.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you very much. And now my pleasure is to welcome the president of Polish PEN, writer and historian, and Consul General of the Republic of Poland in Lviv, Marek Radziwon. Marek, the floor is yours.
Dziękuję bardzo. Proszę Państwa, Romana i Magda zechciały to już powiedzieć, ale przede wszystkim chcielibyśmy podziękować PEN International za przyjęcie i zaakceptowanie naszej propozycji kongresu, który odbywa się w Krakowie. I dziękujemy też Krakowowi, który natychmiast podjął, zrozumiał w mig naszą prośbę. To dla nas, jak już zostało tu powiedziane, tym ważniejsze, że Polski PEN Klub w tym roku obchodzi 100-lecie swojego istnienia. Uważamy w polskim PEN-ie cierpliwość i roztropność za dwie cnoty stojące blisko siebie, ale jednocześnie rozumieliśmy, że nie powinniśmy z organizacją kongresu w Polsce, w Krakowie czekać do kolejnej okrągłej rocznicy, to znaczy kolejne 100 lat. Dzisiaj we wrześniu 25 roku spotykamy się na kongresie w świecie chyba gorszym, a w każdym razie bardziej niepewnym, rozedrganym i z całą pewnością bardziej niebezpiecznym niż na poprzednim kongresie PEN. I jak sądzę, to samo moglibyśmy niestety powiedzieć na kongresie w Cambridge o poprzednim kongresie. Międzynarodowa Karta PEN zaczyna się od zdania: literatura nie zna granic i winna pozostać wspólną własnością narodów bez względu na polityczne czy narodowościowe wstrząsy. Uważam to zdanie za jedno z najważniejszych nie tylko dla ruchu PEN w świecie, dla ruchu PEN jako organizacji, ale w ogóle dla kultury, w jakiej wszyscy w różnych częściach świata, w różnych Ale w tym roku spotykamy się w Krakowie, jednym z najważniejszych miast dla historii, dla współczesności też zresztą, Europy Środkowej. Mieście dzisiaj zasobnym, bezpiecznym, chociaż nie zawsze w historii ani to miasto, ani ten region Europy nie zawsze takim był. I dlatego proszę mi na koniec pozwolić na nutę osobistą. Los rzucił mnie, jak Magda zechciała przed chwilą powiedzieć, przed kilkoma miesiącami do Lwowa. Pracuję tam i mieszkam na stałe i już po tych kilku miesiącach uważam Lwów za swoje miasto. I to niezwykłe ukraińskie miasto jest bardzo podobne do Krakowa. I ma oczywiście z nim wiele historycznych powinowactw. Dzisiaj na Lwów spadają bomby, a alarmy przeciwlotnicze są tam codziennością. Nie potrzebujemy mówić o tym, co się dzieje w Kijowie, Charkowie, Sumach, Odessie, Kramatorsku. Moglibyśmy długo wymieniać. To około 300 kilometrów od miejsca, w którym wszyscy z Państwem się tutaj dzisiaj znajdujemy. Niecałe 3 godziny jazdy samochodem. Oto jesteśmy świadkami wielkiej wojny w środku Europy, jaką Rosja, państwo dzisiaj zbrodnicze, prowadzi przede wszystkim z dzielną Ukrainą. I to dzielna Ukraina stawia przede wszystkim opór, ale nie jest to tylko wojna Ukrainy. Ta wojna zagraża całej Europie i całemu światu. I chociaż mówimy w najbliższych dniach na Kongresie Międzynarodowym PEN Klubu o literaturze, o sile wolnego słowa, musimy pamiętać, że w tle jest coś więcej niż tylko wolne słowo. Jest prawdziwe życie ludzkie i prawdziwa śmierć. Dosłownie kilka kroków na wschód od Krakowa. Pamiętajmy o tym cały czas i w czasie kongresu i później. Dziękuję uprzejmie.
Thank you so much, Marek, and thank you for the warm welcome and for reminding us that in so many parts of the world experiencing war, we express our total solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Only this afternoon, we heard from the president of PEN Ukraine on a panel about the use of starvation as a weapon of war. We are reminded of the suffering of the people of Sudan, the people of Syria, and the people of Gaza. We are in solidarity with all of them. So now it is my total pleasure to introduce a literary icon, a legend, a feminist, and an eco-warrior. Please welcome everybody, Margaret Atwood. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Margaret Atwood, speaking to you from Toronto, Canada. I would very much like to be with you in person in the beautiful city of Krakow, but since I cannot be there, here I am on screen, thanks to the wonders of modern technology, not all of which we approve. Fellow writers, it's a great honor for me to be addressing you at this PEN Congress today, and in such excellent company. My late partner, Graham Gibson, and I first visited Poland in 1984 when it was still part of the Soviet bloc. We knew several Polish writers then, including Ryszard Kapuscinski and Tadeusz Konwicki, and have always admired the way Polish artists have managed hard times with inventiveness, creativity, courage, and cunning. And in those far distant days, with samizdat, which were manuscripts that could not be officially published, but that were copied out and passed from hand to hand, from writer to writer. Graham and I were given some samizdat during that visit to Poland. We couldn't read it. It was in Polish. But the fact of its existence was symbolic, and what it symbolized was hope. In these present days, with the world undergoing a period of profound instability, Poland once again finds itself in a potentially vulnerable geopolitical position. It's fitting that this International PEN Congress should be held in Poland. Risk management has been part of Polish DNA for a long time, and being a writer is in itself a risky business. Why? Artists of all kinds, but especially writers, are always among the first to face the firing squads when dictatorships are on the rise. Writers have no armies. They have no actual legislative or physical power. They have no voter base. They are isolated individuals and thus easy to eliminate. Above all, they say things that autocrats don't want to hear and don't want others to hear. Above all, they say things that autocrats don't want to hear and don't want others to hear. This is true whether the autocrat is of the right or of the left, and whether religious or secular. Artists are a threat to such people because their art presents full humanity in all its complexity, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This full humanity is what autocrats wish to destroy in order to replace it with propaganda featuring perfect versions of themselves. To burn a book is to burn part of the human spirit, and book burnings and book bannings are on the rise. Graham and I and a small group of other writers started PEN Canada, English language, in 1983 to address the plight of writers who were being banned, exiled, silenced, and murdered in other countries. Yes, it was happening back then, over 40 years ago. In recent decades, it has spread. Hundreds of journalists have been targeted and indeed killed because journalists report what they see, and they often see what they are not supposed to see. They bear witness. The word martyr means witness. Murdered journalists are martyrs to the truth. In his 1981 biography of George Orwell, George Woodcock said, "Revolutions are not realizations of the idealistic visions of writers. They are socio-political eruptions in which the collapse of an existing structure of power creates a vacuum into which many forces rush. The freedom that may have been the dominant desideratum in the pre-revolutionary period is the first victim of the struggle for power. And writers and other artists, whatever their roles before the revolution, now appear as challengers because they represent the free intelligence to all who seek to impose new forms of power. We ourselves are living through what appears to be the collapse of an existing structure of power, that of the United States. Externally, the U.S. seems to be abdicating its position as the dominant world power. Internally, it appears to be turning its back on its one-time much celebrated status as an open liberal democracy, the torch carrier for freedom, a beacon of light to oppressed satellites during the Cold War, and flirting with the very kind of autocracy that it once stood so firmly against. Outside its borders, other countries are no longer doing what it says. Witness Russia, Israel, Ukraine, and India, just for example. Wars and power struggles are breaking out all over. And inside its borders, the present administration seems determined to destroy or co-opt American institutions that have been built up over centuries. A fair voting system, a judiciary independent of the executive power, just to name two. The Secretary of Healthcare, for instance, seems to be conducting some weird social Darwinist experiment, survival of the fittest. Let's see who lives and who dies if we remove all protection against deadly diseases. What's the goal? Who even knows? The elimination of poor people because they aren't healthy enough? It wouldn't surprise me. The use of the military to intimidate civilians is another signpost. Many countries in mid-century Europe were all too familiar with that. One of the harbingers of autocratic takeovers is an attempt to control writers and artists, either by censoring them and dictating to them what sort of art they should produce. We saw a certain amount of that coming from the so-called academic left in North America and Britain over the past decade, twinned with online mobbing generally known as cancel culture, or by book burning and banning and the intimidation of universities and media outlets, which we are now seeing on a rather large scale in the United States. The levers are money and lawsuits, but these have been quite effective. Most people with jobs are by nature fearful of challenging authority, or at least any authority with the power to fire them. I look back to the French Revolution, the prototype of all revolutions since, and remark merely that one of its first stated goals was freedom of expression, a value it espoused until its leaders gained power. Then, miraculous to behold, strict censorship set in, printing presses were smashed, and those who had published questionable views were beheaded. During the Terror, you could be executed for just being suspected of thinking counter-revolutionary thoughts. Thought crime, as Orwell would have it. People entering the United States are currently having their phones and computers searched for evidence of thought crime against the Trump administration. Just saying. Self-supporting writers don't fear being fired. Their employers are their readers. For this reason, they are often asked to speak about difficult subjects and to say things publicly that many other people are thinking privately. And that is why I am here with you today, because I don't have a job. By sheer coincidence, just as I was writing this speech, news broke that a school board in Edmonton, Alberta, which is a province of Canada, under direction from their provincial government, had banned my book, The Handmaid's Tale, from their school system, the classrooms, the libraries, because it was pornographic. That's quite funny. The book has more often been criticized for not being pornographic, for having sex acts in it that are not sexy. Well, they aren't supposed to be. It's a puritanical regime, after all. So in the Canadian media, a minor tempest is raging right now, as this is the first ever Canadian province-wide attempt at mass book banning. I'm in good company, however. Brave New World and 1984 are also on the list. I guess Alberta doesn't want young people thinking about dictatorships. I'm happy to report that PEN Canada is protesting these book bannings. Its current chair, Ira Wells, is the author of the recent book on book banning, so he knows the territory. Maybe the Alberta government will ban that book too. Which brings us back to PEN, the astonishing international organization of which we are all members. From time to time, we PEN folk may ask ourselves, what use is all this? What can mere writers do about the massive world problems facing us? Wars, famines, genocides, climate crises. Is the pen really mightier than the sword? Not when you've got the noose around your neck. But until that moment, may it never come, we can at least keep the door open a little. We can keep the candle burning a little. We can give hope a little to those who have been imprisoned for what they've written. A little hope, it's worth something. Actually, it's worth a lot to know you have not been forgotten, especially when sometimes a little hope is all a person has. During our active time at PEN in the 1980s and 1990s, PEN did manage to rescue some writers in other countries, but we did not rescue others. They died or they were killed. It's like everything else, nothing is foolproof. But that did not stop us from trying, and it is not stopping you. So, fellow writers, I wish you all success at this conference. You will learn, you will inform others, you will debate, you will pass resolutions, you will deepen your commitment to the high importance of language and story, and to the principles of freedom of expression and fundamental human rights, or so I firmly trust. Thank you, and farewell.
Wow. Thank you so much, Margaret, for reminding us of the really serious and deep challenges that we're facing in the world today, for the hope, and for reminding us how important we are as writers, as communicators, as storytellers. Now, it is my great privilege to introduce President of International PEN, Burhana Sonmeza, a remarkable writer and a tireless defender for freedom of expression, a man at the heart of the PEN movement. Burhan, please.
Good evening. Welcome to the opening ceremony for the 91st Congress of PEN International with the title Freedom of Words, Words of the Free. Since 1921, we have been trying to meet every year to discuss the problems in literature and in the world. Now we gather in Krakow, Poland, to consider freedom and its connections to the words and writers. Whoever first uttered the word freedom, and in whatever language, was likely subject to oppression and exploitation. Whether it was a slave captured by force or a woman subjected to violence, there was something immediate in need of freedom. A first word always contains the history that preceded it. That history was shaped by labor and suffering, but because it also held hope, the new word was coined and gifted to humanity. The word peace that emerged from war is like that, as is word love that emerged from separation. The word equality that was born from hunger, and the word solidarity that appeared to achieve good things together. In our 3 official languages, in PEN International, English, French, and Spanish, we call it freedom in English, liberté in French, libertad in Spanish. In Polish, the language of this beautiful country is wolność. And in my mother tongue, Kurdish, it is azadi. PEN International was created for this reason. Immediately after the First World War, we worked to spread through literature the words which humanity had forgotten due to wrong policies. And we worked to expand the forgotten beautiful dreams to the entire world, transcending the borders drawn on maps. Freedom is precious, and it is constantly crafted and re-given to us like a jewel by poets. One of the most beautiful of these jewel poems was written by the French poet Paul Eluard during the Second World War. This long poem is named Liberté, freedom. Quote, "On my school notebooks, on my desk and on the trees, on the sands of snow, I write your name. On the pages I have read, on all the white pages, stone, blood, paper, or ash, I write your name, liberté, freedom." You know, the 20th century was the century of unbearable pains, and we hope that the 21st century would open an era of peace for humanity. Now, in this new century, a quarter of the way through, we still hear the sounds of bombs and pain of poverty and oppression from every continent. If war has a powerful history, peace also has a powerful history. We craft the memory of this history in novels, poems, and beyond. By imagining a new world, as Paul Eluard put it, he says, "And for the want of a word, I renew my life. For I was born to know you, to name you liberté, freedom." Dear friends, in these dark times when everyone feels alone, I trust in you with the power of solidarity and beautiful stories yet to be written. Thank you for your creative pens and your tireless struggle. Now it's my great pleasure and honor to invite a legend, a literary great name and persona, Olgą Tokarczuk, to join me on the stage. Olga, please.
I'm really honored to talk with you, and because I have a tendency and I used to simplify everything when I speak English, so please let me switch on Polish. Yes, but I can understand your question, so we can talk in 2 languages.
In this city, do I need to introduce Olga with more information, or everybody knows her in details, maybe more than she knows herself? through her books, beautiful lines, words, stories that she presented us. It's wonderful to read your novels, your stories, which represents not only your own personal experiences, but the collective experience of the whole generation, maybe the whole humanity, all women, even nature included. I'd like to ask a few questions, but my questions mainly will be related to your own words. Preparing this conversation, I restudied Olga's some text, and I prepared some questions from your Nobel acceptance speech, which was a wonderful text, long in every page, a different universe, just whirling, and then other books we will hopefully mention today now. In your Nobel acceptance speech on the opening, you are mentioning a picture that shaped your memory. Mm-hmm. You remember a certain picture of your mother sitting next to a radio. But somehow she looked a bit sad in that photo, and you wondered why she looked sad in that photo. And then years later, you asked her, what was the reason of that sadness? You were not born yet. She said that I was sad because you haven't been born yet. Mm-hmm. What is the meaning of sadness for the things that have not been born yet in this world? Can we say peace or freedom or equality or everything that we are sad about and also long for? Because they haven't been born, or they are born but being mistreated mm-hmm. and undervalued. Mm-hmm. Yours, please.
Dziękuję za to pytanie, bardzo otwierające. Myślę, że ten smutek, który widać na fotografii mojej matki, jest smutkiem, który jest przypisany naszej ludzkiej kondycji, ponieważ w jakiś sposób istniejemy jakby więksi niż rzeczywistość, w której żyjemy. To znaczy, możemy sobie wyobrazić rzeczy dzięki potędze wyobraźni, które nie istnieją. W związku z tym cały czas pozostajemy w pewnej tęsknocie do tych rzeczy wyobrażonych, do świata szczęśliwego, do miłości, do piękna, które mogłoby być, a nie jest, do szczęścia, które mogłoby być udziałem ludzi, ale z jakichś powodów nie jest. I że jesteśmy zbudowani z tego smutku. Gdybyśmy nie mieli wyobraźni, pewnie byśmy tego nie czuli. Ale to właśnie wyobraźnia jest też tym, w czym my pracujemy jako pisarze. Posługujemy się wyobraźnią jako narzędziem obserwacji tej rzeczywistości i cały czas tworzymy to, staramy się opisać to, czego mogłoby nam brakować. Ja uważam, Burhan, że jesteśmy szczęśliwcami, że piszemy książki.
Yes, because we have something to not only express ourselves, but also redefine the world, the existence, and to reshape the reality and to present it to humanity in a new form. But then I see your sadness not only about the things that yet to be born, but also about the things that already born, grown up, but they are dying or being murdered by us. Especially in your novel with that beautiful William Blake's title, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. You talk about a woman, Janina. I know she doesn't like her name in the book. Janina is focusing on defending nature, animals, forests, and she gets involved so many interesting things. I don't want to give you details about novel. And we have nature. We are here born to be part of it. But now we are murdering, and Janina is very much concerned about it. What made you to feel sad about nature as well, about climate, about this crisis, and to write a wonderful novel about it?
Jakby zacząć ten wielki temat. Wydaje mi się, że w przypadku tej książki może tak. Czułam, że chcę opowiedzieć o tym, jak ważne jest uświadomienie sobie, że musimy coś zrobić z tym całym festiwalem zabijania, mordowania zwierząt, niszczenia przyrody. I zdawałam sobie sprawę, że nie mam języka, żeby to opowiedzieć. Że przeczytałam mnóstwo książek o tym, brałam udział w wielu panelach, dyskusjach, podpisałam mnóstwo listów protestacyjnych, podpisałam apele na ten temat i miałam wrażenie, że to jakoś nie działa. I wtedy przyszło mi do głowy, że mam w ręku takie niesamowite narzędzie jak powieść. I jeszcze taki gatunek, który trafia do wielu ludzi, jest chętnie czytany, kryminał, thriller. Pomyślałam sobie, że wykorzystam to narzędzie do tego, żeby opowiedzieć historię, która będzie dużo bardziej skomplikowana i będzie oddziaływała na wielu poziomach niż zwykły list otwarty, niż zwykła dyskusja. Ponieważ głęboko wierzę, że literatura jest bardzo głębokim i wyrafinowanym sposobem komunikacji międzyludzkiej. I że nie jest to jakaś ludzka fanaberia, ale jest narracyjność zapisana w naszym DNA. Że po prostu do życia nam jest potrzebne opowiadanie historii, które nam daje możliwość uczestniczenia w sytuacjach, w których nie mielibyśmy możliwości nigdy zaistnieć, wejścia w głowy ludzi, których byśmy nigdy nie poznali, przeżycia wydarzeń, które nigdy nie byłyby naszym udziałem. Więc otwierając książkę, wchodzimy do jakiegoś cudu komunikacyjnego, który nigdy nie mówi dosłownie, który używa metafor, symboli, który bywa czasami zamazany, niejasny, który domaga się interpretacji, ale który niesie ogromny ładunek i informacji, i emocji, i przeżycia. I literatura, uważam, że pełni taką rolę biologiczną, organiczną, po prostu scalając nas i tworząc z nas zbiorowość, tworząc z nas kolektywność, zbiorowość, która komunikuje się ze sobą nieustannie. Myślę, że bez literatury, bez tych narracji, bez tych opowieści po prostu byśmy byli biednymi, prymitywnymi zwierzętami, które kryją się gdzieś po jaskiniach i które nie mają żadnych możliwości wspierania się i przeżywania świata. Zapewne bylibyśmy martwi, tak myślę. Tak bardzo wysoko cenię literaturę.
In PEN International, our main focus on promoting literature and defending freedom of expression. But that means everything in the world. Then we started to spread our work in different fields, like women writers, writers in prison, and writers working for peace, and young writers. So many things we've been doing. And for this purpose, every year we gather, we discuss the burning issue of the politics and social concerns. And one of the things this year we are aiming, among others, is to focus on the climate crisis. We are going to talk about a resolution about climate crisis and also preparing a manifesto on defense of nature, because it's time now everyone should speak to defend this very foundation of our existence. You talked about nature and then turned the role of the nature of writing. You connected now. I'd like to carry on from that point. In the same book, in the same novel, in some part, you or your protagonist mentions a woman. I got some things I have to read. It will be easier. It seems she had an accident in the past. She described the woman, she says. Or perhaps her spine was ruined by writing, because she thinks that she's a writer. She looked like a survivor from Pompeii. In a way, people like her, those who possess a pen, can be dangerous. That such a person is not him or herself, but an eye that's constantly watching, and whatever it sees, it changes into sentences. In the process, it strips reality of its most essential quality, its inexpressibility. That's wonderful lines from that book.
O tym samym mówiła Margaret Atwood, prawda?
Yes. She very rightly described that line, the power of writer, why we look very dangerous in the eyes of authorities. I think we have something mightier and sharper than sword. That's our pen. Yeah. When you say this, then you say that if a writer or if someone possess a pen, they might be so dangerous, not for humanity, but for those who are harming everything in society and in nature. How can a writer use the memory, you just mentioned, collective memory of humanity and the myth that we created to reshape them in this modern contemporary literature and to present it to new generations?
Mam wrażenie, że zgodzisz się ze mną, bo też znam twoją twórczość, że oboje wierzymy w mit. Oboje wierzymy, że jest to bardzo potężne narzędzie, które można dziś na nowo używać w zupełnie nowy sposób, wkładając w te potężne jakby ramy pewne nowe treści. Ja od początku swojego pisania zawsze odwoływałam się do mitów. Mity są niesamowite, ponieważ wyglądają na proste historie, ale nigdy nie są prostymi historiami, ponieważ są zbudowane na symbolach, na metaforach, a symboli nigdy nie można wyjaśnić do końca. Symbol zawsze musi pozostać gdzieś niejasny na jakimś poziomie. W związku z tym opowieść oparta na symbolach mieni się w czasie. Można ją w nieskończoność interpretować. I powiem ci tylko o moim zmartwieniu, że wydaje mi się, że dzisiaj coraz większym problemem dla ludzi jest rozumienie symboli i właśnie takiego myślenia metaforycznego. I pisałam o tym, że najbardziej boję się literalności, dosłowności, doraźności, ponieważ one zawsze upraszczają rzeczywistość i nie pozwalają nam wejść w te takie bardziej skomplikowane i niebiało-czarne sytuacje. I pomyślałam sobie, że teraz ciebie zapytam, bo zapytam cię najpierw o to, że widzę w tobie pokrewną duszę. Pokrewną duszę, ponieważ w Stambuł, tej książce, którą przeczytałam, widzę twoje cudowne, entuzjastyczne poszukiwanie formy dla opowieści. Znaczy widzę, że pożyczasz różne opowieści, które są w twoim środowisku, rozwijasz je, zmieniasz. I chciałam cię zapytać, jakie jest znaczenie formy dla ciebie? Jak ty się, nie wiem, może to ci się wydać dziwne pytanie. Jakie jest u ciebie napięcie między tym, jak to opowiesz, a tym, co chcesz powiedzieć?
Thank you very much for this difficult question. Maybe I have to give the whole history of my writing adventure.
Przepraszam, że jeszcze ci przerwę, bo przecież byłeś prawnikiem, który pracował jako prawnik, czyli posługiwał się językiem bardzo konkretnym, jednoznacznym, literalnym i nagle dzieje się coś takiego, że przechodzisz na zupełnie inny level, jakbym powiedziała. Zaczynasz uczestniczyć w innej grze. Co się stało?
Okay, now more questions.
Okay.
Let me start with the part about my novel Istanbul, Istanbul, which also published in Polish here, luckily. It's my third novel. When I decided to write something about Istanbul, you know, that's very much westernized view of city is very exotic. The meeting point of West and East, you know, future and past is there. But in reality, there is another Istanbul I wanted to see and show it. And I wanted to see the beauty of city with the eyes of people who are suffering. Actually, the source was something easy for me because I experienced that myself. And when I was a university student, I was studying law in Istanbul. It was the time of military coup in Turkey. And we were activists fighting for freedom and democracy. And I found myself, like other thousands of people, found myself in a famous torture center. It was a small cell, 1 meter by 2 meters, 4, 5, 6, 7 people might stay there. And in novel, I put 4 people in the cell. They need something to pass time. They start to tell stories to each other. Fairy tales, all stories about the beauty of Istanbul, but 3 floors underground, they are being tortured one by one every day. This is something happened in reality. I think it was my 3rd or 4th day. We were a few people, some people were taken for the session in the room. And we had a journalist. I was the youngest. They would call me Kid. And the journalist said, hey, look, I will tell you a story. And he started to tell us the story of Spartacus. And then others started. And in the morning, then they started to have morning jogging, they said, 1 meter, 2 meters. And we would line, we would walk, morning sporting, and try to speak as if we are running by the sea. We say, hey, look at this sheep. And we are imagining things. I remember, and it was in my mind for many years. I said, how we are, you know, so powerful to reshape the reality even in the most harsh conditions. Then I said, if I'm going to write a novel like this about Istanbul, it should show this side. People are in pain, but still they have only one dream. It's beauty. The beauty of city. Freedom is beauty. Equality is beauty. So the beauty became the center of that novel for me. The language was, of course, the language of traditional fairy tales, because I grew up in a small Kurdish village. The Kurdish language has been banned for 100 years. When it was finally freed, I was 26 years old until then. But in the small village, there was no electricity, only gas lamps, and my mom would tell us stories. So I grew up with those stories. Then I said, I will turn the language of those, let's say, primitive oral literature into the language of, let's say, Borges or Dostoevsky, and create a new bridge between my village and this great world. That's the point I started to write. Okay, again, because you got so many questions, sorry. The last point, a lawyer, how becomes a writer? Lawyers don't become writer intentionally. They need an accident. I had an accident by...
Because of money? Or?
I wish it was. I had I call it police accident. I was assaulted by Turkish police when I was a young lawyer in 1990s. They came to murder me. They left me as a dead man, but I was lucky enough to survive, but heavily wounded. Then I went to Germany to have operations and Switzerland. And in the end, I found myself in exile in Britain, getting medical treatment with the help of a great foundation called Freedom from Torture. They provide free treatment for the victims of torture. And then when I was there, because in Britain, if you are a lawyer, you are nothing. They don't recognize your certificate or license. So I was just learning English and trying to survive and getting treatment, because it lasted about 6-7 years there. And then I started to write some stories, like imitating my mother in the beginning. And then now, after about 10-15 years, I found myself in a new world. Then when I returned to Turkey after 10 years, the biggest newspaper had an interview with me. I said, they tried to murder a lawyer, but they couldn't stop the birth of a writer. I think that's our power as humans. From here now, you remind me something about the power of storytelling, myth, memory, and the importance of oral literature. In this world, now we are writers. We are writing, we are not telling. What is the importance of oral literature? I don't know much about the Polish history in relation to oral history, oral language, because especially relationship between parents and babies, children, based on talking. A mother or father would tell a fairy tale to their child, but now we are not telling, we are reading. The same thing, but the tool changed, the bridge changed. How it's happening.
I jeszcze jest jeden stopień, bo ludzie przeżywają historię w grach komputerowych na przykład, doświadczając czy poruszając historią. I pewnie będzie jeszcze 4. stopień, kiedy będzie można wejść do gry i historie będą opowiadane już w ogóle multisensorycznie. I mnie ten temat bardzo fascynuje, bo to jest jakby historia właśnie tworzenia narracji przez istotę ludzką, która zawsze towarzyszy rozwojowi jakiemuś, od oralnych opowieści przy ognisku, które były pamiętane, prawda? Ludzie wtedy mieli pamięć niesamowitą. Potem pozapisywanie ich w książkach. A dzisiaj wygląda na to, że powoli książki już odchodzą i pojawiają się te nowe nośniki narracyjne, na przykład kino. Tak. Okay.
Following this, because when I read your books, I very much, find myself in the deep lake of memory and myth and all things, being shaped around those. In one of your last novel, The Symposium, there's an interesting story. If you read it, you will remember. This story takes place about 100 years ago, in 1913, in a guest house in a mountainous place. This guest house provides treatment for the people who suffers from TB, because at the time it was not curable. And all those people having treatment there are men. No women there. And at the opening of the story, something very creative happening. That's your magic. The wife of the owner of the guest house woman commits suicide. Okay, you feel that, oh, a story starts, man's staying there, a woman commits suicide. The hostess of the house, you expect some mercy, some passion, some, affection. But suddenly the opposite happening. All men, when the woman's body is still in the next room, they start to talk about the womanhood, how women are weak, how they are inferior than men. And also they claim that this is scientifically proven. They don't make anything up. Science proved that women are the lower, say, gender, sex of humanity. And they proudly exchange all those ideas. When you read the book, you think that, okay, all these funny ideas comes from the writer's mind. But then Olga does something in the last page. She says that all those anti-women, misogynistic ideas were really expressed by actual big prominent names. And she gives lists. You give that long list. How many people from Plato to Ezra Pound to Shakespeare, Sigmund Freud, all those people. And this attempt of men, when we look at the civilization of humanity for 10,000 or 20,000 years that we know, they wanted to create a wrong memory of our existence. They said that women is something, lack of something. But you said no. Now the time is changing, the age is changing, and you started to question it. What is the role of writer, women writer, to rescue yourself from this deep lake?
Po pierwsze, to nie wierzę w women writers i men writers. Mi się wydaje, że na poziomie, z którego pochodzi moje pisanie, moja wrażliwość i zapewne twoja, to jest dużo głębiej pod płcią. Więc literatura nie ma płci, tak bym powiedziała. Ta książka jest, podobnie jak Pług, próbą literackiego poradzenia sobie z mizogynią, która jest powszechna na świecie i nie ma się co oszukiwać. Żyjemy w Polsce, wszystko wygląda dobrze i w ogóle jeżdżą autobusy, jest cywilizacja, działają kamery, ale w Polsce kobiety nie mogą decydować o swoim prawie do przyszłości, ponieważ mężczyźni, którzy są większością w polityce, ulegają jakimś naciskom Kościoła, coś kombinują i nie uchwalają takiego prawa. No i nie chcę tutaj szukać, bo to jest tak oczywiste, że ta mizoginia jest wszędzie i właściwie bardzo mnie dziwiło, co antropologowie na ten temat. Dlaczego mężczyźni nienawidzą kobiet? Dlaczego uważają je za słabsze, mniej wartościowe? Dlaczego jest tego tyle w literaturze i my w jakimś sensie tego nie widzimy? Jest to takie oczywiste, że nie postrzegamy tego. I ta książka była swego rodzaju takim wytrychem, taką bezczelną opowieścią, która posługuje się znowu nie literalnością, nie dyskursem, tylko dzięki wyobraźni opowiada tę historię mizogynii od zupełnie innej, nietypowej strony. I chciałam zszokować czytelnika na końcu tej książki. Chciałam mu pokazać, że żyjemy wśród rzeczy, których nie akceptujemy i na które powoli stajemy się ślepi, czy jesteśmy ślepi. I tak rozumiem też zadanie, jakie mam przed sobą. To znaczy zawsze starać się znaleźć taki punkt widzenia, który jest inny, troszkę ekscentryczny, ale który pokazuje, puszcza światło na to, co chcę powiedzieć z zupełnie innej strony. To jest taka moja metoda pisania horrorów i kryminałów.
when you talk about in that, actually those characters, men, talk about women, they are so sure that women don't have the capacity that men have. They say, oh, women like in books only if it's about ladies and gentlemen. And they like stories only about ghosts, dreams, nightmares, that kind of things. Even they claim, I'm sure it was told by some famous men in the past, they claim that in the histories there is no great women writer as there is no great scientist, they say. Now, when I read that part, I suddenly and happily remembered the history of my organization. Now, PEN International, the oldest international human rights organization. We were set up 25 years before United Nations, and it was not set up by men. A woman, Catherine Amy Dawson Scott in London. At the time, she was a very famous writer, poet, and also her nickname was, as a poet, Mrs. Sappho. She felt that there is a need to create something in this world for writers and by writers. And then she started to talk with people like Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, Conrad. He was one of our founders. And she convinced everyone that when the war is dividing the world, when the politicians make all nations hate each other, we have a strong tool, literature, art, culture. And she said that we need to build bridges between nations through art, through our pen. And with her invitation, PEN International started in 1921. So it just happened 8 years after the talk of your characters in 1913 in the book. This is the power and the happiness of different side of history. History is not being written only by certain powers. The whole humanity has a share there. And towards the end, when I was wondering what's going to happen in the book, I know many people compared that book to Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain, but I found a surprising correlation and connection with Virginia Woolf, Orlando. Because in Orlando, you know, a person chooses to become woman voluntarily, not by birth. You know, Simone de Beauvoir, she would say, you are not born woman, you become a woman, if you try to be. And Virginia Woolf created that Orlando character who consciously prefers to become woman, because womanhood is not something to despise of, but to be proud of in her eye. And then, I will not give you details, you do something beautifully in the same way. And then womanhood there is not an accident of existence. It's a great opportunity of humanity there. You are going to save yourself as women. Are you going to save us too? Men. Why are you hesitating, please?
Nie, ja się waham, bo akurat, nie wiem, z kimś rozmawiałam całkiem niedawno i ktoś mnie zapytał, czy jest sensowne robienie na przykład wystaw malarskich samych kobiet, czy promowania wystaw, czy książek o samych architektkach, kobietach. Czy to jest sens? Czy to nie jest wykluczające mężczyzn i czy to nie robi więcej zamieszania niż jakiegoś dobra i porozumienia? Pomyślałam sobie, że w świecie, który byłby równy i sprawiedliwy, to by było niestosowne robić wystawy tylko kobietom. Ale żyjemy w świecie, kiedy jeszcze całkiem do niedawna większość kulturalnych eventów była oddana tylko mężczyznom. I nie ma takiej równości i nie ma takiego sprawiedliwego podziału i wciąż wyciągamy z szaf i z kufrów zapomniane naukowczynie, wielkie malarki, które jakimś cudem zostały wyparte z tego parnasu artystycznego. I dopóki sprawy się jakby nie wyrównają, a głęboko wierzę w to, że przyjdzie taki czas, że ten najprostszy podział na kobietę i mężczyznę, taki społeczny, będzie niósł cierpienie, przemoc i agresję, że dopóki to się wszystko jakoś ułoży i będzie sprawiedliwie, to należy rewindykować, należy zachowywać się rewizjonistycznie, sprawdzać, pisać empuzjon i pokazywać te wszystkie rzeczy, o których nie chcemy myśleć i które uważamy za oczywiste, a które nie są oczywiste.
Thank you very much.
W sprawiedliwym świecie, Burhan, będę cię chroniła też, a na razie radź sobie sam.
Good. That's assuring, thank you. And in life, especially in social political life, when we witness a wrongdoing in people, then we see that wrongdoing not staying only in one place. It's suddenly multiplying, spreading. Like someone is anti-women, against women, then we see they also do some other bad things. Someone is about, let's say, defending killing animals, hunting, and then you know that they are going to do some other things as well. And in your book, suddenly they start, because all their talk are about women. And towards the end, suddenly you see that now they turn to each other. They say, hey, look, there's this guy, when he's not in the room, he claims that to be a philosopher. He looks like a bit woman, like feminine person. And then they make fun of him. And then they say, there's a weakness in him, like a woman or like a Negro. And then suddenly the language of anti-women spread to whole part of the life. And in this age, 21st century, suddenly in last, let's say, decade or a couple of decades, in this century, we've been witnessing the spread, the rise of this, let's say, anti-freedom, anti-democracy discourse and movement, populist politicians. They're everywhere getting power in my country, Turkey, in the United States, here and there. And everyone is suffering, writers suffering. Just a PEN member, Nobel laureate, who was awarded Nobel Peace Prize 2 years ago, Alex Bialysky, was sentenced 10 years in prison. Can imagine what happens to other part of public. Another young poet 3 years ago was, by the court decision, executed in Myanmar. This is happening today in this world. I don't want to give you hundreds of examples. This is our work on PEN International. As a writer, what is the power of our pen and our solidarity to protect freedom of expression for writers and for everyone?
Ja myślę, że dzisiejszą chorobą czy cierpieniem ludzi żyjących na ziemi jest to, że są bezsilni bardzo często, że nie mają wpływu i nie mogą nic zrobić, że zagubieni w internecie, rozbici, pozbawieni możliwości i czasu przemyślenia tego, co myślą, jakie mają poglądy, ci ludzie rzucają się na jakiekolwiek poglądy, czepiają się ich i zaczynają walczyć. I właściwie jesteśmy świadkami, jak w ciągu kilku lat, wydaje mi się, język, ten wspólny język w internecie, jak bardzo się z wulgaryzował, jak bardzo stał się agresywny. Widać to też w kinie, widać to w języku na ulicy. Nie wiem, czy macie też takie doświadczenie, ale przyzwolenie na agresję jest dużo większe niż było jeszcze 10 lat temu. Coś się niedobrego dzieje ze światem. Brak poczucia bezpieczeństwa i bezsilność powoduje, tak ja rozumiem, te wszystkie backlashe, które są... Kończymy. Które występują i przeradzają się w konserwatywne marzenie nostalgiczne do powrotu do przeszłości, gdzie kobiety gotują i rodzą dzieci, mężczyźni polują, zabijają zwierzęta i świat jest taki, jaki był kiedyś. Ale już wiemy, że to się nie stanie. Wiemy, że tak nie będzie i nie ma do czego wracać. Tak samo jak nie można wrócić do węgla, prawda? Co na przykład niektórym rządzącym się wydaje, że to jest takie oczywiste w Polsce. Więc stoimy w obliczu jakiejś totalnej, ogromnej zmiany. Zmiany, która... Już nie mamy czasu, żeby o tym mówić, ale dla mnie ta zmiana przejawia się w tym, że potrzebujemy nowych opowiadaczy tych naszych narracji, nowych narratorów. Jak cię pytałam o treść i formę, to cię też pytałam, czy masz problem ze znalezieniem narratora, jak zaczynasz pisać. Czy też się zastanawiasz, ale kto opowiada te historie?
Now we have something very powerful to create stories with a pen sitting in a room for months and years. On our own, but in the end you come with a big, surprising, beautifully shaped book. Nowadays, what are you working on for us? What are you writing?
Szukam nowych narratorów, ponieważ wydaje mi się, że nie da się opowiedzieć świata, siedząc odłączony w gabinecie ze swoim piórem albo z ekranem, że widzą nas kamery, że ludzie o nas opowiadają na mediach społecznościowych, komentują to, co mówimy, zapewne i teraz, że żyjemy na jakiejś ogromnej ilości poziomów i że literatura musi uchwycić tę zmianę, jaka zaszła w opowieści. Czekam na narratorów zwierzęcych na przykład, to jest bardzo rzadkie w literaturze. Chciałabym zobaczyć swój świat opowiadany na przykład oczami myszy w moim domu. Ale chciałabym też zobaczyć świat opowiadany czatem, oczami czata GPT, z którym rozmawiam. Myślę, że czekają nas takie poszerzenia perspektyw pisarskich. Jest to dla mnie fascynujące i ciągnie mnie w tę stronę. O czym piszę? Piszę powieść, którą obiecałam sobie i moim dalszym i bliższym znajomym, ludziom, którzy mieszkają gdzieś nieopodal. Mianowicie historię jednego z największych przesiedleń w historii Europy. Mianowicie po II wojnie światowej na Dolnym Śląsku, gdzie mieszkam, na skutek porozumień rządów międzynarodowych Niemcy zostali wygnani z tych terenów do Niemiec, natomiast na tereny Dolnego Śląska, Pomorza, Warmii i Mazur przybyły nowe, ogromne grupy, wielomilionowe grupy ludzi z zupełnie innej kultury, innego języka. I to byli między innymi też moi przodkowie. Ta historia jakimś cudem nie jest porządnie opowiedziana w literaturze polskiej i postanowiłam sobie, że zanim odejdę na emeryturę, to ją spróbuję opisać. Ale nie pójdę stąd, dopóki się nie dowiem, nad czym ty pracujesz.
Okay, I will say just a few things. Before that, I'd like to ask you something. When you were talking about mouse, I tried to improve my Polish. You used a word. What is mouse in Polish?
Mysz.
Oh God, in Kurdish we say mishk.
Really?
Yes, same mishk. Okay, setting. Last night I went to a hotel at just before midnight. My sister sent me a message. She said, our great cousin Mishka died. We nicknamed him Mishka. Mishka comes from mouse. You see how, yes, how the world is small, you know, from...
You translated William Blake, so you know that
Yes.
about connections and mysterious, you know, bonding everywhere.
Yes, yes. I've got many questions, but I have chance. I will spend more time with Olga, but here we have to finish, unfortunately. Olga, thank you very much. You are a great
Thank you so
writer,
much.
great
Thank you.
speaker. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Now, this was a real treat. Thank you very much, Olga and Burhan, for this inspiring conversation. I think that it gives us so much inspiration to think about the power of stories, not just the power of words, of free words, but also of stories, people behind them, creatures behind them, nature behind them, things behind them. Thank you so much, and we hope to continue this conversation throughout the Congress.
Yeah, I just want to add my thanks for this window into your creativity and how you develop and see your stories, and to remind everybody that at PEN International we are about storytelling, we are about imagination, but we're already also about words, stories as resistance. So thank you all so much for coming. Magda, we're absolutely thrilled, aren't we, this evening to have so many people here with us.
Thanks again, and let me just add one more sentence of thanks. I wanted to thank the interpreters. At PEN we celebrate languages. We celebrate translation, and many of you were able to listen to this wonderful conversation because there's Piotr and his colleagues in the booth working for us.
Thank you so much, people of Krakow, for joining us. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow night. All week we have...
Yes, and on Thursday and on Friday.
And on Friday. So we have a week of wonderful conversations, wonderful writers from all over the world. Thank you for being with us this evening. Another round of applause, please, for our guests. And as the public leave, I just would like to ask our PEN delegates perhaps to please remain seated just for a few moments. Thanks very much, everybody.